Welcome, everybody, to Teach Me Pokemon, the podcast. I'm your host, Cory, and along with my co-host, Jared, we're best friends, been playing Pokemon for a very long time.
What's up, Pokemon players? Jared here with Cory. This is Teach Me Pokemon. Another great episode we've got for you today, coming hot off a great conversation with Michael Pramawat. Today, again, we are sitting in the gap between U.S. Nationals and Worlds, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a whole lot to talk about, Cory.
Oh, for sure, man. Did you know, I think cups are starting in the first week of July or something for points for next year.
All I know is that I don't have a regional schedule yet, so I'm not a happy camper.
So, Pokemon, you are dead to us without a regional schedule.
But you can come back to life very easily. Very easily. Just send me some dates and times. As Cory often will tell me, yeah, I'm just going to go into sales and I'm just going to base my schedule off of the Pokemon schedule.
Pretty much.
When I see it.
I need to know what cities to hit up by that schedule. So, what are we doing, Pokemon? We can't plan our life right now.
You might be selling refrigerators one week in Sao Paulo, and then the next week need to sell some cars in Portland. That's just how the season breaks down.
That's just how it goes. As it should for everybody.
As it should.
Yeah, as it should.
As it should. But we're super excited to be talking with everybody today. Cory, today I want to start let's do a refresher of what's happening or what we think is happening in the meta right now. So remind us a little bit of what we saw at Nationals and maybe your opinion of what do you think people are tinkering with in the background?
Oh, the tinker. I still think, just playing on live, but then we saw the NAIC results. I think knowing the decks like that Japan plays in these other regions, I still think Gardevoir is just people's default selection. Now, I think they did that in NAIC without a lot of information, right? Twilight Masquerade had just come out. There wasn't a ton of data to go off of. So I don't anticipate that being the play for NAIC. I think Gardevoir will still be strong, and I think a lot of players will be on it. But I don't think it's going to be 6 in the top 8 like it was at NAIC. I think at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of tinkering going on. I think Lugia is going to see something different. That's my kind of take. I think people have been just so geared or zeroed in on the Mincinio, Chinchinio line. I think there's another way to play this, and I don't know what it is and what the best way is, but I think Lugia, is obviously a strong deck. Japan loves to play it, and I think give our players here in North America, Canada region, and Europe, give them time to kind of tinker with that deck. I think there's other ways to play Lugia, and I think that could be an interesting deck that no one's talking about, that's in the pocket. That's a pocket pick, and then when we get to Worlds, I think that's going to be played a lot.
Oh, no, I like that a lot. The big thing that I've been wondering is how much are people looking at Nationals and trying to find responses to the only 2 decks that were in top 8, right?
Yeah,
it seems so difficult. I'm sitting here, I'm playing against a lot of Gardevoir online.
Mm-hmm.
I'm figuring it out a little bit.
Yeah,
but there's no good answer, right?
No.
It's more just about learning how to play the matchup, when to knock something out.
Yeah.
But in what you're saying, there may just be a bigger shift happening, and if you're looking just to combat these 2 decks as your A and B villains, that might be a mistake.
Yeah, I think it'd be a mistake, and it's and you just kind of play the numbers here. So there were 2,700 masters, right, that played at NAIC. Now, I'm not here to say all of these were American players, right? That clearly wasn't the case. In the top 4, we had U.S., France, Japan, Australia, right? So the top 4 at NAIC were all different regions. But to take it to NA Canada, do you know, this is my first question for you of the day, do you know how many Worlds invites were given to U.S. Canadian players?
I do not. How many?
270, roughly,
wow,
give or take. So that's 10% of the field that was at NAIC. So these 270 players, I don't think they just look at what NAIC did and say, okay, that's going to dictate our game. I think they look at it because they're going to take any data, but they're not going to like base their Worlds play off of NAIC. These are top level players. Most of these players are in testing groups and with other, high level, high thought. They're thinking all of these different variables. So I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think they're looking at, oh, Gardevoir was 6 of the top 8, and now I need to counter Gardevoir. I think they're literally like, no, this is the play for Worlds, regardless of whatever happened at NAIC, because we're just condensing the field of play now to, mostly players that I would say are like, could walk into a regionals with any deck. And you would say, if they made a top 8, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I don't doubt that. Now there are some players that snuck in to Worlds, and I'll call it sneaking in because the way I mean that is like maybe they just grinded cups, they grinded challenges, they went to every regionals, maybe never made a top 8 or a top 16, but made some day 2s and just found themselves like, hey, I got 600 points, championship points, which is great, and they're there, and I'm not doubting them as a player, but they may not be at that level where some of these other people are. They might look at, like me, I would say, well, I'll look at NAIC and kind of say, well, Lostbox and Gardevoir, okay, I got to make sure my deck can hang with Gardevoir and Lostbox and forget Lugia, because Lugia wasn't even in the top, 32? I mean,
right.
Where was the first Lugia, right? So Isaiah had 32nd. So, or I'm sorry, Alex Szymanski's 21st. But like these other players, the ones going to Worlds, majority of them, they won't look at the data. Does that make sense? Am I like making sense in that point?
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, there's no recency bias here, right? Is what I hear you saying. Like, there's more to look at. There's more to consider.
Yeah,
they're looking at everything right now.
Everything, and then like the elephant in the room is there's another set coming out, right? Like Shrouded Fable, I think is the name of the set. Everyone wants to talk about the Dusknoir line that can knock itself out, lay damage counters out. Now you're behind in prizes, so counter catcher. I own it. Like that mechanism will be a thing at Worlds, and so we haven't even seen that deck, right? This is the problem with having North American championships, and then 2 months go by, and then a brand new set comes out. It's like, man, here we go again. Like, there's no data or tournaments to see, and now we just jump into Worlds, which is fun for the viewer, but I think it made it harder, unless you're in this like intense testing group, but I think that makes it harder to prep for a tournament, knowing you have like nothing to look back at.
Oh, yeah. You and I always talk about other sports. And for those of you that don't watch a lot of other sports, usually the best team, whether it's football, basketball, they get a longer period of time off, especially in football, before they have to play their first game in a day 2 situation. I don't like that. I don't love that. So like 2 months off, no real competition to keep the things going. I think that's super difficult for people.
Oh, I think it is too. And it kind of forces you, it makes those testing groups so valuable here.
Agreed.
100%, right? It's like you can get in with a crew, you're playing. I mean, this would have been like back in the day when we were kids. And when I say kids, we were in college and the 4 of us, there were 5 of us roommates, but 4 of us played. I mean, we would just be at the kitchen table for 2 months just playing, right? And so that's what those groups will benefit. I think, well, no one really benefits, but those groups are going to end up better than maybe like a Pramawat, who we had on last week, or on the episode earlier this week. Sorry, we had him on earlier this week. And Pram is like, yeah, I mean, he can just probably pick up a deck and go. And
he's so good.
He's so good. Now he has friends he bounces stuff off of and stuff like that, but this isn't like, he's not 22 in a house or in a city with others and they're playing every day, together. So it does make it hard, I think, having this kind of time off between 2 major tournaments, and with the next season starting. Like, that's like weird, right? Like, people are going to cups and challenges, earning points for next year before this year is even wrapped up, right? That'd be like the NBA season has started, but the finals haven't happened yet. It's like,
sure.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's kind of funky Pokemon. There's a few things we gotta get everybody on the same level, right? Like, everyone has to be on the same format. We got to get that problem solved. But then also this way seasons start is always kind of goofy to me.
Yeah, I would advocate, I have no problem with a new set out coming for Worlds, right? You said that. Yeah. That's fun. But cool. 2 months, and I get it. Maybe it's like maybe it's a travel liability. Like, some people qualified for Worlds at Nationals.
Yeah.
And now they've got to be able to get to Hawaii. And that's not an easy destination to get to.
No.
It's a good destination because it allows Japanese players to get there. Kind of hoses European players, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But Europe gets a Worlds every now and then too. Yeah. They're putting it on coasts.
They're putting it on coast. They get London. They get London.
They got London. We usually get Orlando. I let Tokyo all the time, man. Tokyo all the time.
Tokyo every year. Yeah.
Tokyo every year. That's fine. Let's have a run.
Well, what they need to do is just bring back the grinder, put this sucker in the United States, and that Worlds will be packed. And make that grinder like $100 to enter or something. That thing would have 5,000 players in it. It would be wild.
Well, we're gonna talk about the grinder actually in our educational moment today.
Oh, we
so
are. Okay.
Funny you should bring that up.
Oh,
but I want
you know something we don't. You know something?
Oh,
you
I don't know something you don't. Okay. But there's some interesting stuff out there nonetheless. I want to move us to a fun new section that Cory and I have dreamed up. It's called Rivals. Oh. Cory, do you remember? You played the original game here in the U.S. like I did. We were in the 4th, 5th grade, something like that. Had our Game Boys rocking.
Yeah.
Who?
I was in preschool, but sure, you might have been in 4th or 5th grade.
Okay, I'm older than you. Whatever. Who is Ash's rival?
Gary.
Gary, good job. Good job.
Ooh,
Great answer.
I was worried. Gee, you didn't prep me for this, so that was.
I did prep you.
Who was Bill? Who's Bill?
Bill's a newer character.
Oh, okay.
He's a newer character.
I almost said Bill.
Bill is in, and we're going to remove you from the podcast.
on the Johto region.
On the Johto region. Kanto region, everything.
Kanto,
we'll see you next
Johto. Sinnoh, I got that one.
But
okay, Gary.
Cory and I have been best friends for a very long time. More often than not, we find ourselves in agreement.
Yeah.
No longer will that exist here on Teach Me Pokemon. We're throwing it aside.
Okay.
We're forcing ourselves to take different points. It's going to get heated, I guarantee you. But we've got 3 questions today. I'm going to kick us off.
Okay.
And Cory's got one, and then I've got one. We're just going to debate it out here. And if you have a strong opinion on this, put it in the comments. Send us a message about it. Or if you have a hot topic that you would love us to debate, Rivals is going to become a staple of the show.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, mailbag, Teach Me Pokemon Podcast at gmail.com. I'll put that in the description.
Put it in there. Put it in there. So here's the first question, Cory.
Okay.
Filling in the blank.
Yeah.
The best deck that was not in the top 5 usage of day 2 in NAIC is what? The best deck that was not in the top 5 usage of day 2 at NAIC is what?
Okay. And can you remind me the top 5? It was Gardevoir. It was Lostbox.
Yep.
It was Lugia?
I don't believe it was Lugia.
The top 5 usage.
Okay, sorry. Here we go.
Okay,
yep, I'm looking at it right now.
Hit me.
Gardevoir number 1.
Okay, Gardevoir.
Lugia number 2.
Uh-huh.
Lostbox number 3.
Okay.
Raging Bolt number 4.
Okay.
Dragapult number 5. You're telling me the best deck that is outside of those top 5. What do you think is yours in your opinion?
Easy. And I think this deck, I think there's room to tweak it too. That's going to be better for World. Xianpao. I'm a believer. I think this.
This already going poorly.
Xianpao. I think Lucas Jing, if you watch his match, he got robbed. Like those were, I'd call him unlucky. I would call Lucas got unlucky on stream in day 2. I think this deck can pivot and do a lot of things. It can attack you with 1 prize, or it can attack you with a 2 prize, or it's unlimited damage. Its only issue is when you can't get the Baxcalibur up. Well, just lay the 2 Frigibacks down. You're probably fine. So, I think the deck can hang with Gardevoir because it pressures the Radiant Greninja all the time. It can one-shot the Lugia. It can do that same thing that it does to Gardevoir to Lostbox. It can knock out the Raging Bolt. And against Dragapult, like, that's you got to spread 60 damage 3 times in order to knock out a Baxcalibur. So I think it was 8th on your usage list here. I think out of the top 5, you could probably knock out I think Raging Bolt will probably take a step back now that people have played against it. And I think Xianpao takes the 5th spot on your top 5 usage list.
I'm like, I can't tell if you're like just trying to incite rage in me, or if you really believe.
The question was not what deck's going to win Worlds. That's a different question. You say that should be in the top 5. Xianpao will be in the top 5 usage. It's that good. You know it's that. It makes top 8s. It makes top 8s. The question's not if it wins.
Why play it if you're not going to win? That's ridiculous. We play to win the game, Corey. We play to win the game.
That wasn't your question. Your question was, should it be in the top 5 usage? And it should be. It is that good of a deck.
What is the best deck that is not in the top 5?
Well, okay, the best deck not in the top 5 is Xianpao. Okay, Miraidon, that was a one-trick pony play.
That's the one. I agree. It's not Miraidon.
I question Charizard. I question it still because I don't know how many people ran it. Everyone went to Gardevoir, and I think Gardevoir in this format has a better play against Charizard than it used to. I get it. Oh, Charizard is dark and it can one-shot the EX. There's more pivot plays now that Gardevoir has than it used to have. And so then next one, Xianpao. So easy. It's the Snorlax stall. I love it. The control community. I get it. I'm on the board. I'm on the board, but it's
you're about to be off the board.
It's not
you're about to be
usage.
Off
it's
the
not
board.
usage. Not that one is going to have like 4 high-end players will play stall or control. It's not going to be in top 5 usage.
I didn't say. I'm not looking for bulk. The question was, what is in the top 5? What's not in the top 5 that should be in the top 5? Baxcalibur, it's not going to win. It's not going to win.
It doesn't matter if it's going to win. It's the best deck that's not in the top 5.
This is outrageous.
It's the best deck not in the top 5. Let's get Lucas on the phone. Lucas.
Actually, I have a clip that I'd like to play from yesterday when we were on the phone. You know, Jared, this control deck is so good. This control deck that I'm playing on live is so good. It's so good, man. Like, there's this guy won this tournament online. I've been playing it on live. I can't lose. You're a disgrace to the control community right now. This is obscene. I would take any Snorlax variant over friggin' Xianpao. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm so over this deck. I can't believe you said that. It makes me so angry.
What was your deck? You haven't even given yours yet. You just been attacking mine.
Close your eyes and pick something. It doesn't matter at this point. It definitely isn't Xianpao. Oh my goodness gracious.
Xianpao.
You know what? I will pick Snorlax just to stick it to you. That much. It is that good. And as you and I have been talking about, I'm shocked. I thought I was setting you up. I was like, here's Corey's chance. Talk about Snorlax. Talk about some of the changes that are coming a little bit. And then you zagged and you went right for my heart. Right for my heart.
I worry deep into a tournament when you're playing high-level players with Gardevoir, the Pidgeot control stall matchup, it's a knife's edge with Gardevoir. It is a very delicate matchup. You either hope they drop the wrong Pokemon, they don't bench Screamtail or something, or you can flute, not ideal Pokemon on their bench. So it's really where the game is played, and then it's a lot of back and forth. You got to get the Milotic out. It's a dance. I don't mind the matchup, but it's a dance. Lugia is hard because in this version that I had put together, there was a guy, a Japanese player, had won a Limitless tournament. And the problem is there's no Temple of Sinnoh in this, so the jet energy is just all day. And Lugia, against a good Lugia player, they'll hold those jet energies, and it's hard. Like, if they don't bench bad stuff, it's tough. Lostbox, if you can get rid of the switches, you're probably fine. Raging Bolt, there's a lot of bench things to pick out. And Dragapult, same thing. So those 3 matchups are good for stall, and then the Charizard's always been good. The Miraidon is good. the Baxcalibur into that matchup is good, but there's just not a lot of stall players out there. So that's why it's like I can't say it's going to be in the top 5. What best deck is in the top 5 usage? I just couldn't go there because there's not going to be that many people on it to include it into the usage in this format.
Angry. So angry right now. We're gonna keep hearing about Chi and Pao. It's done. If it wins Worlds, we'll need to think about it. Next episode, if Chi and Pao wins Worlds, I will do something crazy.
Okay.
Like we need something.
Gotcha.
All right, let's move on to your question.
All right, my question here is, and we saw this play out in the finals at NEIC, and I think arguably right now the top 2 decks, if you were to force someone to say it, they'd probably say Lostbox, Gardevoir. And I think because the 2 decks are they're one prizers, which is nice. You can add some nice tech cards in there, so you're not kind of stuck with this like 60 card list that's not flexible. So these pro players and high end players, I think they like these 2 decks. I want to say, like, and you know me, I know Gardevoir didn't win the tournament, but that is the better deck in that matchup against Lostbox. It should have won. Andrew, great player. Andrew's a great player. I clearly he's the next superstar. He's who's my boy from Minnesota, Jared. He's Anthony Edwards. He's Edwards. He's coming up.
He's Ant-Man.
He's Ant-Man. He's Andrew Ant-Man. I'm trying to make it work.
Ant-Man.
He's Ant-Man. Andrew's coming. But Stefan should have won this tournament. Kyoto, as we talked about last week, should have won this tournament. Our other Australian dude, Kywin, great player. Doesn't play all the time. Great. He should have like there were people on Gardevoir that should have won the tournament. It's a better deck than Lostbox. It's more versatile. It's not stuck in this. Well, I didn't get 10 cards in the Lost Zone, so I can't do anything. Like, it can still pivot and do stuff. So Gardevoir, it's a better deck than Lostbox. Don't you agree?
You're just disappointing me this morning. You're just disappointing me this morning.
It's Lostbox has 1 card.
You're gonna tell me that Andrew Herrick on Lostbox, he didn't run through 3 scrubs, Corey. Like, he ran through people that we've had on the podcast that are like mesmerizingly good players, and he was equipped for him. But this is why I think you're wrong. Gardevoir is all about, it struggles with 2 things, and it's the 2 things that Lostbox does well. It struggles with decks that can come at it quickly, right? It needs a setup, even with the Evoluter. Like, if you can start sniping down Curlias real quick, it slows its curve down a little bit. It could still get a really good start. I understand that. This is speed Lostbox. It can do that. And the other thing is it wrestles with decks where its Unfair Stamp or its Iono doesn't just fully shut you down. And Lostbox can bounce back from that. You throw out your favorite support Pokemon Comfy, you're drawing cards. Like, it can hurt it, but it can't shut it down. And that's the same thing with Gardevoir. You can Iono Gardevoir. It doesn't really care. It's got Curlias. It's drawing cards. So we're talking about decks 1 and 1A, and I got to give the edge to Lostbox.
No, you just used the point that you didn't realize you dug your own grave. That is the play. Yes, it can comfy, flower select 2 cards, but once that gets later in the game, that is brutal. You're going to run out of comfy. You have 1 comfy left, or you pull out a Greninja or something that needs to retreat. And then you Iono them to 2, Iono them to 3. You just keep Ionoing the Lostbox player until they just dead drop. That happens. It takes pieces to do things. You got to super rod your energies back. You got to have a Mirage Gate. You got to have a Switch in your hand. Those are all cards you need. And Gardevoir can just keep Ionoing you until you're done. And that's what takes you over the edge.
No, I disagree because this is my thing. I'm running a lot of decks right now online. I'm running a lot of Ancient Box. I'm running a lot of Future Box. These are my 2 favorite decks right now. Those decks have such a hard time bouncing back from the Iono because they're not thinning the same way that Lostbox is. Lostbox is constantly thinning. It's because of its Lostbox mechanics, it's getting things in the discard pile. It is not as susceptible to the Iono or to the Unfair Stamp or to the Roxanne as these other things are.
Question, teacher. You just said, and I'm not trying to ridicule, I know what you meant, but you said they lost zone into the discard pile. They don't lost zone in the discard pile.
No, they lost zone into
the lost zone.
They have 2 areas where they get to thin.
I know, but you can't get those cards back. So it's like,
but they don't want those cards back.
Sometimes you do. How much Lostbox do you play? You are in decision-making mode sometimes where you're like, well, okay, I got to put another Psychic Energy in there. So now you're down to 1 Psychic Energy. So that's the only one you have in play. So once it's in the discard pile and they Iono you to 2, you gotta get 1 card back. It's not thin. There's not 3 in the discard pile like if you were just thinning it out like Gardevoir does.
I know, but then you put that Comfy active, draw for turn, you get 2 looks, you're gonna hit something. And that's the other thing that I like about that I think hurts Gardevoir in this argument is you're running into a deck, and you know this better than anybody, Corey Dickman, Mr. Control. What's the most annoying thing about playing Control into Lostbox?
It's all the switch cards.
It's all the switch cards. So what does Gardevoir want to do? They want to throw a counter catcher. They don't even bother running boss's orders anymore. Maybe they run 1. I don't know.
There's probably 1.
But you try to stick it, you can't stick it either. Like it is just not in the favor. If I'm Gardevoir and I'm looking up against Lostbox and I'm like, this is gonna be a dogfight.
All right, so let me ask you situational. Okay, you're Lostbox. Your best play is what? What are you trying to get out against Gardevoir? If
I'm trying to get that Iron Hands out as quickly as possible, like Andrew showed us.
100%. The Gardevoir, Iono knocks out the Iron Hands. It's called Iron Thorns. The Iron Hands knocks it out. You've burned 2 Mirage Gates to get that thing going. Now your Iono to 2 or 3. Your Iron Hands is in the discard pile. All your energy's in the discard pile. Realistically, most times, you've lost zoned at least 1 Mirage Gate during your first 2 or 3 hands or turns. Now you've burned 2 already. You have 1 left. You have to get the double colorless. You have to get the double colorless and the Mirage Gate and the Iron Hands and the Lightning Energy back into your deck after you've been Iono to 2 or 3. There's no way. There's no way. But you can't get that back in 1 turn.
The problem, what you don't understand is I've already taken 6 prize cards because you're so dadgum slow. And I'm knocked out this. I've taken your Curlia. Like that's what we saw. That's what we saw. Because that's the hardest thing is, especially, and this is true now too, what Gardevoir has given up running the Monkey Dory, and you were telling me about this yesterday, is having more psychic energy. And that hurts because sometimes...
Less psychic. You mean less psychic energy.
Less psychic, sorry, because they're running 1 or 2 dark energies.
Yeah.
Right, so that doesn't help you. That doesn't help getting rid of that in your discard pile. So what I've been running into a lot is sometimes by the 2nd, maybe even the 3rd turn, there is not enough energy in the Gardevoir's discard pile to execute an attack which is going to result in knocking out something, the Iron Hands, whatever, so be it. Because as far as I understand the matchup, the best thing that you can knock it out with is that Drifloon. Maybe get a couple of Monkey Dories, but unlike me, who's silly and damages the Monkey Dory when it's active the first turn, and I shouldn't, and I'm not in day 2. But I just think if you're telling me you have to give the edge, even if it's 50.5, it's Lostbox. It's easily Lostbox.
You don't hit him with the Drifloon. I guess you could if that's going to win you the game. I still think the play is you Monkey Dory 3 damage, you smack it with Gardevoir. It's 10 damage away. And so it's just a Monkey Dory kill the next turn, and then you get a free swing into something else. That I think in a perfect world, that's how you would set it up.
But what did you say was the MVP of Lostbox that you haven't brought up yet? That just gets you right around that.
The MVP? What did I say? Oh, the Iron Bundle. Yeah, the Iron Bundle's frustrating.
Get out of the act. Take 2 more prize cards. What are you talking about?
That Iron Bundle is so good. I think another play could be you attach energy, you throw 2 onto Fluttermane. Now you got 4 damage counters on that. You move 3 for the Dory. Now you put 1 onto the Iron Hands. You smack it for 90 now, and with a berry on it. So now that Iron Hands can't one-shot the Flutter Mane coming back. Well, I guess you could still Iron Bundle. I don't know. Whatever. Gardevoir. GG.
Oh my gosh, that's too good.
All right. What's
Final
our last
question.
one?
Final question. The most popular deck, and I'm talking because, as we're going to talk about in our education moment, you're walking into a day 2 situation the minute you sit down at round 1 of Worlds. There are no bad players here, right? At Worlds.
Yeah.
What is the most popular deck at Worlds 2024?
I think it's going to be Lugia. I believe it will be Lugia. I think the Dusknoir will add things to it, so I don't know how that's going to change. I think there's ways to drop damage on things.
Let's say without the new set, like if the new set wasn't in play and we were running NAIC back as Worlds, let's not include the new stuff just yet.
Sure. I think it's Snorlax. I think it's Snorlax. I think it's Lugia. I think there's counters to it to help the Gardevoir matchup. You are just as slow as Gardevoir is, right? It takes 2. In the ideal scenario, you go first, you get the Archeops, and turn 2, you're set up. Gardevoir, it likes to go second. It always has Arven, so you go ba-da-da, and you get the Curlias, and then you go second. Now you're off and running. So they both kind of need a little bit of setup to get going. But I think the Legacy Energy, I think we haven't seen some of the cool variations that this deck can do. It can run Iron Hands in it. It can, the little sniping Ogre Mask, the water Ogre Mask can snipe. It can trap. Like, I think it offers some outs. I get it if it doesn't get going, and by turn 2 or 3, you kind of scoop and go to the next game. And that, I think, is frustrating. But given the fact that Japan likes playing it, North America is used to it, I think that will be the deck at Worlds. If we were not counting Shrouded Fable, which that is a thing. But if you're saying take that out, I think it's Lugia, Jared. I do.
Well, I'm not allowed to agree with you, and I wouldn't even wave if I was allowed to agree with you. So I think that the best players out there are Wrath players, not Path players, and Lugia is a Path deck, in my opinion.
Lugia's a Path deck. How is
Lugia?
How is
Lugia that Lugia in its current form is a Path deck because it is just wildly inconsistent. It's wildly inconsistent.
That makes it a Path deck because it's wildly inconsistent?
Yes, because the path of your own deck dictates whether you're going to win or lose that game.
Lugia doesn't need a Path. Lugia plays well into everything. Even like a Miraidon isn't.
Maybe Path or Wrath. I'll give you that. I'm wrong about that. It's not consistent enough.
Sure.
The best players in the world are going to play something more consistent.
Sure.
So I'll even draw from our last argument, Lostbox variants #1 most played at Worlds.
Lostbox. But before I say that's false, I'd like to apologize on behalf of Jared, who said the top players in the world. Hairu, who won the Japanese championship, our apologies. Royoya, our apologies. Ryo Ishii, we are so sorry. Kaijo Maya, we did not mean it. Jared takes it back. How dare you, Jared? These are high-end players that ran this at the Japanese championship. I think Lostbox. Yes, it's the girl that got you to the dance, but you're not going to dance with her there. You're not going to dance with her. I think Lostbox has let people down more times than they would like to admit. Obviously, it paid off for Andrew. But I think in some of its matchups, and I think players, the unlucky part of Lostbox is you will flower select Jared, and then it's Cram and it's Sublime, and you're like, I did nothing to deserve this decision, and now I literally have to like throw one of my options away from winning the game, and I think that is what's held Lostbox away from just being like the far and away best deck ever put together in the format, because it just like there are decisions that players have to make that are out of their control. And I think there's still too much variance in that versus like decks. I get Lugia is frustrating to get set up, but it's just like how do you optimize your deck to get set up? You're never like put in a weird spot unless you have to research away a ton of cards that you don't want to. Lostbox literally forces you sometimes to make a decision that you would never have to have made. So I think that's my only thing against Lostbox about on a world stage. I think players are going to try their best to control everything and not have the game dictate if they're going to win or lose.
Cory, let me ask you a question.
What's the question?
When's the last time a Japanese player won Worlds?
That's unfair. You have it pulled up in front of you right now. I mean, I'm going to say Shintaro.
Absolutely.
I'm going to say Shintaro.
Yes. And what year was that in?
2021, 2022. No, 2016.
2016 is correct.
Yeah.
So what you, in your whole Japanese argument that you went into,
really, you can't do this. Start a war with Japan.
What you failed to realize is that their setup is not helping them at Worlds right now. They have fantastic players, but this best of one nonsense is causing decks to day two and win that have no business in a Worlds format. So get that argument out of here. Amazing players over there, but you're being hosed by your tournament organizers.
Or does Japan have the same problem you and I have, where we just get too creative? We're so good at the game that we overthink it. And we're, instead of just landing the plane right where we need to, it's like, hold up. I'm going to do Greninja because it plays really well into what counters what's going to do well. So that's perfect. And then it was like, oh no, overthought that one. So
Listen,
I think
Cory,
we have the same problem.
I agree. I peaked at the 2008 Grinders in Orlando, Florida. I peaked. I saw the line. It was Empoleon Bronzong at the Grinder to get into Worlds that year. I saw it, but I countered myself by not running a Claydol, or else we could be sitting here talking about my Worlds run almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, your
Empazon. So I blew it, and I agree with you. Great artists are never realized in their own time. Maybe people will look back at us.
We don't talk about that enough, and people don't want to hear something that happened 16 years ago because that's how old we are. But like you had the deck in an era that people didn't really share information like they do now. We were just in our apartment, and you were like, "I like this Bronzong, and I like this Empoleon, and then we're gonna put this together and run it with supporters." And like we were just like, okay, like you knew what would play well into stuff. And then we show up to that tournament at Worlds, and it was everywhere. Like, unbelievable. Like, that would be like if you had a blog now or, like, a podcast where you talk about it and everyone just copied you. That wasn't the case then. That was wild to me. I will never forget that moment. You should have just run the Claydol.
And then I lost. I don't think I won. I think I won one match, that entire Grinder, because I ran the supporter line instead of the Claydol. And the low points of my life, still to this day, were losing to a very elderly man from Canada dressed as Pikachu, who was running fire, and I was running water, and I lost that match. And thankfully, the only thing that kept me alive and probably still playing Pokemon was a very sweet mom in round 9 who was running Flygon, and she had no clue what she was doing. And thankfully, I walked away with one win at that Grinder.
I remember being knocked out at that point, and then came over, and all of our buddies, David, Aaron, no one was able to make it through the Grinder. So we watched you. Like we were like, and I remember being so nervous for you. It's like, please, Lord, let Jared have this win. Like
he's our ride back to Texas. We need him in a healthy mental state.
We're staying with his aunt and uncle. Like this won't go well. So yeah, that was a low point. But you're a master builder. This is you in life all over across the board. You construct, you build, and you know
what I do.
But taking it to play, you have gotten a lot better. Oh, I'm serious. You have, you go 3-0 at your league the other day or last month or whatever. I mean, you're there, man. You're seeing it. Your Memphis Regionals, you played pretty well at that Memphis Regionals.
I did.
Like 7 years ago. You were doing well on that Espeon.
Espeon
GX.
Espegarb. With Drampa in there too. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Drampa. Yeah, I forgot
that's
about that.
Good stuff.
Yeah. But
that was Rivals was good.
Rivals. I love
Rivals
that.
was
That's
good.
a great
I like that.
segment. I'm
Great
excited.
segment.
Yeah, we need a
We'll come
sponsor
back
for
to that
that
next
one.
week.
We'll find a sponsor for it. Maybe Twix or something, like a company that has like two the left factory and the right factory. I don't know. We'll think of something.
I love it. Well, here I want to talk a little bit more going into our education moment, talking about Worlds. The grinder, for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, Pokemon at Worlds used to have like a final play-in tournament.
Yeah.
And if you didn't qualify on points or wins or whatever the system was at the time, you could show up to the last tournament of the year. And I believe it was the top 8. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cory.
Yeah, it might have been top. It might have even been top 4 in each room. Right, there were
in each room. We had multiple rooms at this point. It was wild, you guys. This was 2008.
Yeah.
And the top people would automatically qualify into Worlds. It was really cool because some of the best players in the world, for all the old heads out there, Clay, was his last name Carney?
Clay Carney. Yeah, I think Clay Carney won that grinder.
Clay Carney, who was running Impazong, made it through to day 2. But there were good names in the room that could then qualify into Worlds, or you could just get on a tear, and make it in. Yeah. And then the next day, after those 2 tournaments, after the grinder finished, then Worlds actually started.
Yeah.
And it was just fun. Like, it got you excited, like you had a chance, and you go in. But the reason I bring that up, and the reason I want to talk about what I'm going to talk about today in our education moment, is we advocate for people to play Pokemon for whatever reason they want to. Right, Cory? Mm-hmm. If you want to go to that tournament and experience it for your first time and have fun, some people are just there to play. They don't have high expectations for themselves. I'm not telling you why to show up to a Pokemon tournament, but I am telling you that everybody that's showing up to this tournament in Hawaii coming up here, they're there to win.
Yeah.
They have a chance to win, and they're there and win. So gone are the days, in my opinion, of I'm just showing up for fun. They're having fun along the way, but we're talking about competitors.
Yeah.
So let's dig into mindset a little bit today for our educational moment. I believe whether you are at Worlds right now and you're qualified and you're going, or whether you're going to show up to your first League Cup, regionals, whatever, if you really want to push and you really want to have these big competitive goals, you have to start every round 1 with a day 2 mentality. You have to.
Yeah.
We talked about this earlier. The players don't have a choice right now at Worlds. There are no scrubs that are out there right now that don't know what they're doing or aren't practiced enough with their deck or don't have the strategic knowledge that the first 3 rounds, the only thing you're worried about is some strange deck, but you're a better player. Yeah. That's gone. Yeah. That doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So you really have to sit down round 1 with, I'm going hard every single move, every single play, and that's going to help me reach my goals. Do you agree or disagree with me a little bit on that, Cory?
I don't disagree with you on mindset. I think you have to have the day 2 mindset, and you have to take everybody seriously. Like, there's an element of like disrespect that will get you in a hole, because if they're playing at a regionals or an IC, everyone in that room understands the mechanic of the game. So if you just are like not caring, you will find yourself with a loss. I will still say though, there's still a gap between like this high end level player, then there's this next tier of like you understand the game, you play really well, but you just haven't like made it deep into tournaments. And then there's players that are just like first time regionals and they're there to have fun. And you could get paired up against a player like that. Now, they can still win, but your round 1 is so random that I think you still could kind of sleepwalk through a round 1 win. But the problem is you don't want to have that feeling then going into round 2, because then you're like, well, that was easy. And then you get a wake-up call against somebody that knows what they're doing. And now you're 1-1. And where you could have been 2-0. So I think the mindset is still like you got to take it serious and be day 2. But I still think your round 1 matchups can be a little cakewalky because of the randomization and so many people being at these tournaments. It's just the odds that you're going to hit another, high-end player or somebody that like has the ability to win the tournament is less likely.
I agree. And Pram was talking about this on our last episode. So if you haven't listened to his interview,
Yeah.
go listen to that. His mindset is rounds 0 through 3. Yes, the quality of the opponent isn't always as high, but you can run into some crazy decks that your deck is just not suited for, or that you're not mentally prepared for. And you have to be awake enough in those rounds just for that. Now you flip over somebody, they're fumbling around, they make a misplay, you're probably feeling a little bit better. But that's what's so interesting about Worlds is those type of things aren't existing. If someone's playing an off-the-wall deck, they're well suited in that off-the-wall deck, and they're ready for what you have coming.
Yeah, and I think honestly that's like why Stall and then later Pidgeot Control did so well in the beginning, was like no one had practiced against it. And then you had players that knew what they were doing with it against players that had no idea what your next move was going to be. And you were just like kind of getting auto wins. And I think as, you know, you get a player like Azul that wins the Stockholm Regionals and other players that had gone deep into tournaments on Stall and Pidgeot, you just are more comfortable against it now. And they are, as you know, I'm on the committee, right? But like of the control committee. But the only downfall of control is like sometimes you just hit a deck or a player that just knows exactly what they have to do, and you're like, there's not really a way for me to win, unless there's just some super unlucky Twisted Sisters or Misfortune Sisters, or you know, a flute or something's prize, their last Turo or Palpad's prize, or something unlucky happens. But that outside of that, yeah, you're at a level, especially at Worlds, where everyone knows what matchups are what and how to play against it. And so, you know, that's what made like Shintaro's deck in that 2016 World so cool, was like, that's a deck that I know people knew what Audino did, but like no one had probably ever practiced against it in theory. So that is cool. But yeah, I'm with you on that mindset. You have to go into a tournament expecting to do well. Like, you have to visualize it. You have to see yourself with the win, and you can't get ahead of yourself. You kind of take it a round at a time, but you have to have that mindset of like, I'm here to make top 8. Like, I'm here to make top 8, and I'm going to do these things in order to get there.
Well, let me ask you this, being the only person on our call today that has been in a day 2, what changes from day 1 to day 2 when you sit down across from somebody? What should people expect, or what should they expect from themselves if they are going into day 1 with a day 2 mentality?
I think you can't be satisfied. I think there's a really, especially when you've made your first one, for example, I think there's a really easy way of being like, wow, I got here. Like, this is what I wanted to do. So if I'm playing whoever in Portland, like my first round was Raul. It was like, oh, I know this guy, like, but I got here, so this is fun. I don't care, I'll lose. And it's like, no, like, this begins again, and it's a 6-round tournament, not an 8 or not a 9-round one, you know, or a 5-round back then. And so I think you just got to get into it. I think the thing you have to get over first is that the room is just so much more empty. I think that was like kind of the first jarring thing, is like the first day that's just packed and there's noise and there's tons of people everywhere. And then you walk into day 2 and it's like, oh, it's just this little section here. And it feels like you're like in a real tournament at that point. And so, but I think that mindset, like, yes, you're going to see names on the chart, on the page, on RK9, and you recognize half of them, but you just got to get in and understand, like, they're playing the same game you are. You're good enough. You know the deck. You know your deck. You ideally know what they're doing. So you just get in and play, and it shouldn't be much different than day 1, just knowing that there's a little bit more at stake moving into day 2. But don't be satisfied. I think that's the prisoner of the moment thing of like, I'm happy. I accomplish whatever your first goals are of making day 2. That's typically everyone's like first goal. I want to make a day 2, or maybe it is I want to get points. I want to be 5-3-1 or something. So I barely missed, but I got some points. But that second goal, you just don't be satisfied that you got there, right? Look at Azul. Like, one of the top players in the world didn't make day 2 at NAIC. So it's like, this isn't a given for everybody. So
right.
That's how I was thinking.
I think that's good. Set your goal. If your goal really is to end up at Worlds one day, start practicing those habits now, not just your physical habits like we've been talking about on a lot of other education moments. Pokemon is so mental. It's so mental on a lot of different levels. And the more that you can train yourself to not be unkind, but to be competitive, which are two different things, and I think people misconstrue that a lot.
Yeah.
Then the more that it's just going to pay. Cory's a great example. Cory is very competitive. I don't think he's ever been unkind to someone at a tournament. He may not be super talkative.
No.
He may be unhappy if he doesn't win a game, but I don't think you've ever gone out of your way to be rude to someone.
No, never. I've never started the rudeness. Let's say that. Now, if someone's like calling a judge over for something stupid, or they're not, my pace of play has been slow, which is typically not the case. But like, then it's like, dude, what are we doing? Like, why are you starting something here? And so never like a nasty. I just remember in that Memphis regionals, I think it was like round 5, and I think we both were 3-1. It was 3-1. Other than that, yeah, round 5.
Yeah.
And this guy was convinced that we were going to tie. And it was like he had one game, I had won a game, and we're in game 3. And he was basically just like, "Don't even finish it out. It's a tie." And we were in turns.
Time. Yeah,
we were in turns. Yeah. And I was like, "Hold up." And most of the match he had been on me. "You're not playing fast enough. You're not playing fast enough." It's like, "Bro, like I'm playing fast enough. You need to worry about what you're doing." And we get into time, so I'm like kind of taking a breath, like, okay, well, let's finish this out properly. And I think I was turn 0. He went first. No, I was turn 1. I went last. So I was okay. 0, 1, 2.
Yeah, you were. Yeah.
Yeah, and so he was like, draw, good game. And I was like, hold up, I can win here. And he's like, no, you can't. And I was like, yeah, give me a second. Like, let me process through this, the sequence here. And he's like, no, you can't win. And then I ended up like doing the did and then got the win. And he was just stormed up, like was just so upset. And I just like sat there for a minute. It was just like kind of heated, but like taking a breath, like, Jesus, guy, And so he kind of started it. But yeah, I would never be unkind to anybody, nor are many people in that room. Now, when the stakes get higher, or maybe they think your opponent's doing something kind of fishy, not shuffling properly, then I think tensions could get a little bit higher. Or if there's beef already between players or something. But that Pokemon is pretty chill in that way.
I love it. Well, that's really all we have for today. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in with us. Be sure, if you're listening on podcast, give us a like, give us a review.
Yep.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe to the Teach Me Pokemon channel.
Yep.
That just helps us continue to doing. And just so y'all know, anybody that's still listening, we've got some sick plans that are coming down the pipeline, and
baby,
we need your help to get there.
Yes.
So
be ready.
Be ready.
We hear you, Brent Tonneson. We hear you. Oh, well, I don't know. Hey, I want to clear something up real quick from the 2008 World Championships. Jason Klaczynski won the tournament on Gardy Gallade. He did beat Blissey, that was run by Con Lee. So I think we've said Blissey won. It actually was GG won the tournament, Jared. Our boy Clay Carney got 24th, so he went through the grinder and then ended up 24th.
And ended up going 24th, yeah.
And then friend of the podcast, Kyle Sablehouse, 14th on Gardy.
Get it, Kyle, baby.
Get it, Kyle, Gardy Gallade. Empazong did very well. Jimmy O'Brien finished 4th. Frank Diaz finished 7th. Sammy Sakum finished 10th. So a lot of Empazong here, Jared, throughout the top 32 of the 2008 World. So you had it, my friend. I'm so sorry. You should have won.
I wasn't there.
You should have.
I wasn't there.
I know.
I'll get on my soapbox on another episode about no energy attacks. So we'll get that later.
Fun fact. You know who finished 14th in the seniors division that year?
Who?
On Impa Impa Omastar, which I'm trying to remember.
The Omastar.
De-evolved. I think Omastar de-evolved.
I think so.
Our own Tord Redcliffe.
Get out of here. In the seniors.
In the seniors division.
No way.
Impa Omastar. So basically you and Tord are the same. So there you go.
But that means we were there with Tord and didn't know it.
We were there with Tord. Tord was a senior and we were
Tord
was in the senior division and we were in college. So probably good that we didn't talk to Tord out by the pool, but
if only we had scouted him out back then.
If only. Hey, Tord, you want to sign a 30-year contract with us? We don't know what we're doing yet, but whoa, man, redo.
Good.
I love it. All right, Jared, it's a good episode. Love talking with you. And as always, we'll catch you later. You can find us at roguemedianetwork.com. Teach Me Pokemon Podcast. Come and dive with us.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.